Hi and welcome back to Crayonbox Flying Adventures, or the Recreational Pilot. In the last episode we looked at how I decided on which aircraft to buy, how I did it and what technique I used using a decision matrix that I created. One of you guys suggested that maybe I should use aircraft instead of a car as an example. So in this video we are actually going to look at a fresh example of the two microlights that I was going to choose from, and how I came to the decision that I did and what factors were involved. Now of course we'll be actually looking at the actual real specifications of those aircraft as they would be at that time. Okay, not today but at that time, because things have changed a little bit with the aircraft. For example, the P&Ms are now produced in India, and with the issues with pandemic around the world, there are different shipping delays and all sorts of things going on like that. The airborne equipment aircraft, they've now got a new model which includes 100 horsepower, but we'll be looking at the previous model that was available to me at the time, which was the 80 horsepower. It was called the M3 Sport. So let's do the comparison, and I'll be going quite deep into it. I'm not sure exactly what I did last time, and it'll be interesting to see if I come out this time with the same result. So I am going to use, as I said, the same specification, but this time it's with a slightly different approach because I haven't got the previous example. So we're starting from scratch. This is a new decision on the same aircraft. Let's see what happens. I hope this helps you, and I hope that it will give you some sort of a way to determine what you want to do in the future. This is obviously an example about aircraft, but as I said in the previous video, you can use this technique for any decision that you need to make, be it computer, a home, a renovation, buying a car. It's really endless if you've got a big decision to make. And the other thing I might say as well is that this example only included two different products. You can use as many products in the spreadsheet as you want to if you add more columns and adjust the spreadsheet accordingly. If you want a copy of this spreadsheet, let me know, and then you can adapt and modify it. You just need to make sure that you've got Excel, Microsoft Excel. Coming up now in this flying adventure, alright, we're going to take a look at the spreadsheet to decide which aircraft is better for me. Now everyone's decision here will be different. It will be determined by what specifications and data and everything are relevant to you and what is important to you. And for example, are you wanting to go fast, slow, land on short fields, long fields, do adventure slow flying, or do you want to get somewhere quickly for cross country and do some travelling? Do you have a requirement for large luggage capacity, or do you want to be able to just do some random daily flights? I don't know. It's up to you. I can't answer that for you. So let's have a look at the spreadsheet. So in the first column, in this blue column, first of all I've listed the cosmetics. You can set this up however you want to. Now also remember that all of the specifications that I'm using today are based on what the manufacturer has provided in their sales brochures, and some specifications, and probably the best place to get some specifications from, is also mostly from the pilot operators manuals, the handbooks. POH, and that will give you some really fixed, good, solid performance figures, but it won't tell you colour ranges and different things like that. So you need to get the information from wherever you can get it from that is reliable and as accurate as possible to make the best choices here and decisions. So let's get on with it. And first of all, as I said, blue column, cosmetically, how does the aircraft look, what are the colour choices available to us, can we customise the wing colours, and what is the cockpit design layout. You might of course have more options you want to put in here, so put everything you can think of into your choice here, into the matrix, and hopefully you know, this is to give you the best outcome for the scoring that will result from your decision making process. Performance of the aircraft. Get the specifications from the data sheets provided by the manufacturer and be as accurate as possible. Maximum takeoff weight I've used here. We've got two aircraft basically as well to talk about. We're looking at the airborne M4 in this case. The M3 aircraft that I originally looked at was the only option at the time, but I don't seem to have specifications available to me now to be able to do that. Here's a little thing. When I did this originally, the spreadsheet wasn't quite as refined as what it looks here now. I've made this a bit more, I guess, functional for you guys for this video. But at the time when I came up with the concept, the specifications might have changed since then, that's one thing. But that original spreadsheet, I've actually lost it. So I was really keen when I did this to see if it came out with the same aircraft choice that I made back then. And I will wait till the end to explain how that turned out, because it surprised me a little bit. Or did it? I don't know. It did actually. Let's just say there was a little bit of relief. That probably gives it away. So we need to look at the specifications, and the airborne M3 912 80 horsepower was the only option at the time. They now have the M4 with the 100 horsepower option, but I'm going to use the aircraft as close as I can get it to what I was looking at the time. And the other aircraft that we're looking at here is the P&M Quick R 912 100 horsepower, the ULS engine in that as well. And ours, the aircraft we get is an Explorer variant, if you like, to the specifications of the agent in Australia. So it may not even be something that was available to the rest of the world. I don't know. You could customise an Explorer aircraft how you want it, because we've got the faster wing on the Explorer type buggy with the bigger tyres and the bigger wheel spats. Anyway, that's not what this video is about. And of course I got to customise my instrument panel as well, which was really good for me. So we look at the airborne, and we looked at all of those specifications, and I'll just go through first of all the spreadsheet layout. Blue column is basically all of the description of the specifications and different performance items in the list. The second column is the first aircraft's actual specification, actual numbers. So cosmetically you can only, it's all sort of subjective as to how you write that. There's no actual numbers to put for those things. And we've got all the weights and speeds and different distances and different things there. In the next column we've got a score that we give that the airborne, the first aircraft. How do we rank? Not how do we rank, but how does their specification for the aircraft rank compared to the other aircraft in this list, which is the P&M Quick R 912 100 horsepower. And again we compare the colours and everything else and specifications. What you then have to do, we'll finish the guide. The next column is the importance. Then we've got a score matrix, which is an automatic way of adding up and calculating out the scores for the two different aircraft. Those scores are then added up, those columns are added, and we get a final output score for the two aircraft, which we then compare to work out, well, you can see straight away which aircraft comes out ahead. The one with the highest score is the winner, based on all of the data that you put in. Simple as that. And your emotional rating when it came to importance. So, in the first column we have got, cosmetically speaking, colour range preferred for the airborne. I didn't think it was my preference, so I didn't put anything there. Again, subjective for this. And preferred colours of the, I preferred the Quick R. So it got the highest score, and the airborne got the lowest score. Overall looks, I thought the P&M looked better, so it got the high score. Customised wing colours, both were pretty much I was happy with. So I gave them both a 2. Okay, you could give them a 1 or a 2, both, as long as they're both the same, it won't really affect the outcome or the result. And the cockpit design layout, Airborne was good, it had a big screen, but the P&M gave me flexibility and customization capabilities, so I liked that option and it was useful to me, so it got the highest score. The maximum takeoff weight, so flight performance and characteristics for the aircraft, both the same, 450 kilos, both got a score of the same number, 1 I put for these. Usable payload, the Airborne got the highest score because it had the higher usable payload according to the specifications I had. Maximum usable fuel, P&M had the better number there. I'm not sure what's going on there because I'm not sure where they get the 56 litre maximum usable fuel for the Airborne. 56 litres, when in fact the tank capacity is actually 70 litres. Does that mean you can't access 14 litres? Or is that 14 litres? Yeah. Or does it mean that they've also factored in a reserve, which P&M haven't? So I don't know how that works out there. Couldn't find the answer. This is my example, okay? If you were really looking at an aircraft, if this was a true thing you were doing, you would probably ring the manufacturer and ask them, what's the go? What's the story here? Because you really need to know. You should find out and get accurate information for these types of things. Okay, then we looked at the fuel consumption per hour because that's going to determine how far we can travel, how long we can fly for. But there's another factor in that we'll talk about in a moment. So 10.5 litres per hour. So if you just wanted to go for some cheap flying, 10 litres an hour burn, and didn't matter how fast you were going, you weren't travelling any certain distance, then a low fuel burn's a good thing. But if you're trying to get somewhere in a hurry, a low fuel burn going a long distance in a hurry would be awesome, but of course drag catches up with you and you won't be able to do that. So that comes into play as well, as you'll see. 10.5 litres for the Airborne, 13 litres for the P&M. So then we took the calculated endurance for the Airborne, which was 56 divided by 10.5 hours, 56 litre capacity usable divided by 10.5 litres per hour burn gives us 5.2 hours of flight time, and the P&M was 63 divided by 13, which is 4.8 hours of flight time. The Airborne actually came out ahead there by 0.4 hours. Then the calculated distance, no wind of course, it's just calm air. 62 cruise speed of knots times 5.2 hours gives us 322 nautical miles. And this is where you see that fuel burn per hour is not critical if you're going distance, it's about how fast you're going as well. So the P&M won this one because it was able to do at 75 knots, 4.8 litres per hour, 360 nautical miles. Now 4.8 hours as well to cover that distance versus 5.2 to cover a lesser distance in the Airborne. Something to look at. Of course you haven't allowed for reserve fuel here, and you should do that. You need about a minimum of half an hour, I believe it might even be 3/4 of an hour now of reserve fuel when you land. V&E, not really probably big importance, but interesting to note that the Airborne was 85 knots V&E and the P&M was 105. Big difference. Trim speed 62 knots, hands off flight speed, and 90 knots in the P&M. Big deal when it comes to cruising. Mind you, 90 knot cruise is going to burn a lot of fuel very quickly, so probably not very efficient. Distance is going to become a factor there, so you won't be cruising around all day at 90 knots is what I'm saying, and in an open cockpit it's pretty noisy. Stall speed same for both aircraft, 35 knots. Best rate of climb, Airborne 900 feet per minute, P&M 1200 feet per minute. The P&M won that one. Empty weight 241 kilos for the Airborne, 235 kilos for the P&M. and the overall height 3.1 meters for the airborne, 2.75 for the P&M. That means it can get into a lower hangar door entry than the airborne can, so the P&M won that one. They've both got wide tyres, however the airborne had an option I wouldn't have used, which was the Tundra tyres. They're probably a bit too big, cause a bit more drag. That's probably why you're getting a little bit less range out of your fuel tank, don't know. Certainly speed would be affected, and that wasn't a concern for me. But if you want the wide Tundra tyres, you'd go the airborne in that case, or the P&M for me was suitable. I put one for both. I thought they were about the same. The P&M does have narrow tyre option on the Quicker. Don't know what the type is, but it's the Quicker, the fast one. And you've also got the other aircraft, which is option, which is 6-inch tyres, which are what I've got, the bigger, fatter tyres. So that was a good option. It was in the middle ground of being super wide Tundra versus narrow. You've got the usable payload with full fuel. I've done a calculation there using the specific gravity of fuel. So in the airborne, it's a 70 litre tank, full tank, specific gravity, comes out anyway, usable payload minus fuel equals 179 kilos. The P&M was about the same, scored the same, 176, 3 kilo difference. Could be a factor if you're worried about 3 kilos. Mind you, some of us eat that much in a day, so yeah, body weight can fluctuate that much too. No, I didn't say anyway. Takeoff distance to 15 meters. 235 meters required by the airborne. 266 for the P&M. Not as good. Maybe it's a smaller wing thing, but it's got more power. So yeah, don't know what really happens sometimes with aerodynamics and how these things work. It could also be to do with the testing. Were these aircraft both tested in ISA standard environments, like with normalized temperatures and humidity? I don't know. Air pressure. Landing distance from 15 meters. 320 meters required by the airborne. 225 required by the P&M. Much better performance for landing. Interesting. So that would mean that if you're going to, before you can take off, okay, with the airborne, before you can take off from a 235 meter runway, you need to be able to land on it too. 320 meters required. So in both cases, the P&M was able to land and take off under 300 meters. So in a sense, if you look at landing and takeoff, the P&M does better if you take both landing and takeoff distances into consideration. Distance rate. Read that again. Descent rate. So glide descent rate, 650 meters per minute in the airborne, 500 feet. 650 feet per minute in the airborne, 500 feet per minute in the P&M. P&M's performing better there, gets the score. Maximum seat load, airborne slightly better with 5 kilos more, so they get the score. But I mean, if you weigh less than 110 kilos, or your passengers at least have to as well, the P&M will suffice. Fuel type, well, obviously with a 80 horsepower Rotax, the airborne wins this one because it can use the 91 octane fuel as opposed to the 95 minimum in the 100 horsepower Rotax. Goes with the engine specification territory, doesn't it? Wing data. The wing, and this relates to turbulence, it probably increases your takeoff rate and glide distances. Wing area in the airborne case is 12.9 meters wing area, and a bigger wing of course feels the turbulence more, and that's also relevant relative to the weight of the aircraft. Both aircraft weigh the same. A bigger wing on the same aircraft is going to obviously feel more turbulence. The P&M has a smaller wing area and therefore probably won't feel as much turbulence, and there's a bit more coming about that soon as well, shortly. Wing weight. I believe the P&M's 55 kilos, whereas the airborne is 57 kilos. I haven't written the number in there, but P&M wins that one. Wingspan 9.7 versus 8.5. So the again, the P&M's lower and narrower will fit into a smaller hangar door than the airborne with the wing out. And storage is obviously going to be slightly less. Folding wing. Can you fold the wing on the aircraft? Airborne? No. P&M, yes. That's good for if you've parked in a field and there's a storm coming and you need to tie the aircraft down. You can also fold the wing down and tie it up so it won't be affected by storm wind conditions. Depending on how big the storm is, it may not matter. Roll trim. No roll trim in the airborne, but yes on the P&M. Pitch trim. Manual on the airborne. Electric switch operated on the P&M. You might prefer the reliability or simplicity of the manual system, so that one there you can score how you want to. It's subjective, that one. Flight stability, turbulence. So in relation to turbulence, the larger wing of the airborne is a disadvantage. Has other advantages with that glide and ascent rates and everything though, and the slower speed handling capabilities. Mind you, if you look at the stall speed, the stalls are both 35 knots. I don't know how it performs at 45 knots, but anyway. The P&M has a system called STARS, and that stands for Stability Roll System. So that means we can adjust the roll of the aircraft. It adds stability when there's turbulence as well. It's got an automatic sort of a correction in the wing using a pulley system. That gets the score there. Glide distances from 1,000 feet. The airborne, 1.2 nautical miles. That's how far it will glide in a 1,000 foot descent. And also therefore the P&M, 1.5 nautical miles. It's got a better glide distance over 1,000 feet descent. So it gets the score. Pricing wise, they were about the same when I looked when I was buying, so that wasn't a factor. Trade-in, I had an option to trade the airborne. However, I didn't with the P&M, but I was selling my aircraft privately and did so that wasn't really a big factor. But a trade-in could be a big deal when it comes to what you do with your aircraft. Location and distance to the manufacturer. Well, the airborne's closer for me, it's in Australia, but the P&M was in the UK now and India. So yeah, I mean, but parts, there's an agent in Australia, so ordering anything, visiting the agent for the P&M wasn't an option, but visiting the airborne factory is. If I had to take the aircraft in for some reason, I had that option. I don't really have the option with the P&M, but most parts are going to be dealt with via, courier deliveries and things anyway. And Rotax engine parts, we have a dealer in Australia, and I would be dealing with that same company located in Victoria, more than 1,000 kilometres away for either aircraft, so it didn't really become a factor there. They both got the same score. And then the engine type, I wanted the 100 horsepower just for extra punch and capability, even though there was the problem with the different types of fuel. I can't use the cheaper fuel in the 100 horsepower. But anyway, the airborne had the 80 horsepower, and the P&M had the 100 horsepower. So that's a look at the spreadsheet. Once we've done that and put all our specifications in, we can go through the list, and as I've kind of been doing as we've been talking about this, go through the list and score which one's better, which one's the worst for your certain usage, or based on the specification given by the manufacturer. Once you've given them a score, in the green column you can now put a number represented 1 for low, 3 to high for high, as to how important that feature is for you. So if glide distance is important, you'd give it a 3. If fuel capacity is not important, you'd give it a 1. If climb performance is like, yeah, it doesn't really matter, give it a 2. So if you're not really fussed on it, give it a 2. If you really need a feature, give it a 3. And if you don't need a feature and it doesn't really matter to you, like seat weight or capacity or wingspan or something, give it a 1. Low priority, doesn't matter. Once you've done that, the grey columns automatically calculate and add up the scores across the page, and now comes the time when we reveal which aircraft won. As I said at the beginning of this, I had to do this all from scratch again, since I did it 3 years ago, and I was not certain which way it was going to turn out. And we're about to find out. And I'm really hoping, well, I already know, but I was really hoping when I did this it was going to come out the way I hoped for, that it should have, and show me that the aircraft that I chose 3 years ago is still the right aircraft for me today. So if we look at the numbers, the airborne M4 912 UL80 with a score of 112 points means nothing. Until we look at the score of the other aircraft, which is a P&M Quicker 912 ULS 100 horsepower, comes in first place with a score of 151. That is means the airborne's only got 2/3 of the score of the P&M. The P&M has basically 50% more points. I don't know how you want to look at it, but if you just look at 112 versus 151, it's obvious that the P&M came in better. Now, if I adjusted some of those things and refined them down a little bit, I'm pretty sure the P&M is still going to come out in front for me. It will be completely different for everyone else. How you score this, how you use this, is going to be different, depending on your purpose. You might even choose to go rotary wing, gyrocopter, helicopter. These things may not, I don't know. Airborne versus P&M, that's how I came up with the decision. Maybe there's a lot of you guys out in the world at the moment making this type of decision. Maybe that's why this is important to you. Are you going to go airborne or are you going to go P&M? And if you go those two, maybe you've still got the options. Do you go, what's that guy's name in America? You know the one. Evolution Trikes. He's got the Revos. He's got all of those other variations. Tubular frame, composite chassis, you know, all that. So there are options there. They might be better because of locality and accessibility and flight training as well in America there. There's also, I don't even know, there's all sorts of other variations of these Microlights around the world, and depending on where you live and your accessibility to the manufacturer, I mean, you're probably not going to get an airborne very easily unless airborne are exporting them to your country. And likewise, I'm not going to get a Revo very easily, especially these days at the moment, without me importing it from America. And then I've got the difficulty of dealing with America for parts for the actual aircraft, not the engine. It's still a Rotax engine, but yeah, globally it makes things a little bit more difficult. I hope that helps you out, and it's clear and understood how I've done this and why I came up with my solution. It wasn't really just a matter of I like the colour of that one, I'm going with that one. It was looking at everything, the overall specifications of the aircraft, how does it suit me, and at the end of the day, look at the way that the answers came out and make sure that you're happy with the outcome. Because in your gut, if it says that you should have gone the other way, did you do some of these numbers wrong? Did you make some mistakes? And if you're not happy with the outcome here again, or maybe that's still not the aircraft and you should still look for some other versions of aircraft to suit you, even if it is a global delivery transportation system issue. I don't know. Anyway, thanks for watching, and remember, get out there and go and have a great flight.